Hi, this is Bobby Cobb. Welcome to the Presence Posse podcast. Today we have a special guest joining us for the second time, Goddess Andrea, who is a tantric practitioner and a sex educator. Also on the line is Dr. Fred Blum. He is a self-inquiry coach and one of our regular Presence Posse members. And today we're talking about playful presence in the bedroom. So Andrea, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, the work that you do, and how did you get to do this work to begin with?
Okay, awesome. Well, hello, I'm Goddess Andrea. I became a Tantra practitioner 2 years after my divorce. I was really in that dating game and wasn't loving the ideas that were happening. I wanted more to my life, so I took my Tantra training because I do love sex. And what it did for me is it just opened up more of an experience rather than just meet and greet and a wham bam, thank you, ma'am, and see you later thing. It opened up to a whole new world of like self-development, but through a pleasurable way, more so than just having to talk about it and go through those emotions and whatever the feelings that come up with personal development, digging deep and doing all that work is really hard, but Tantra really makes it an easy, gentle way to go through it and full of pleasure and intimacy. So that's how I became a Tantra practitioner. Online, we do a 21-day intimacy adventure, which we will be doing that again in January. And that one really kickstarts having fun and healing and enjoying your own body and accepting yourself. And a lot of us, I think all human bodies are human bodies, and what the size, the dimensions, the whatever doesn't matter to me. It's about the touch, and no matter what size your body is, we all enjoy being touched. So I like to spread the touching. I like to touch people, and I like to help people on their journey. And yeah.
And Fred, give us a little bit of an introduction. I introduced you as a self-inquiry coach and a practicer of presence. I know in your background you were previously an integrative, holistic chiropractor. Tell us a little bit more about the Fred Blum story.
Well, there's more than that. Yeah, I guess. All right. Anyway, by the way, very nice to meet you, Andrea. This is my first time meeting you. Bobby and I go back, I think, God knows how long, past lives. But anyway, my background is as a self-inquiry coach, is really in just helping people to kind of discover who they really are behind the facade, the ego, the identity that we create. I was just saying with someone this afternoon, just before this call, that I think that if I was going to really make a very bold general statement, it's that ultimately all of the cause of our suffering, whether it's on a personal or on a planetary scale, comes down to this simple case of mistaken identity, that we've become identified with something that we are not, and it can affect us everywhere in our lives, our personal lives, our health, our professional lives, and as I'm sure we're going to explore today, in the bedroom or wherever else that may occur. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Great, thank you. So, pardon me, Fred and I don't do a lot of direct intimacy work. I am a liberation hypnotist. I do help people overcome debilitating thought loops and limited mental mindsets. So occasionally I get into a little sexual dysfunction with clients, and my experience has been, at least for the people that I'm seeing, the vast majority of the problems with intimacy have to do with mental static and time traveling and just all sorts of issues. What has your experience been, Andrea? And in the work that you do, how do clients typically come to you, and what are you going to explore in the 21-day journey into intimacy?
Yeah, well, I do believe it starts with ourselves. You can't share an intimate moment with someone if you don't know how to be intimate or what that even looks like for yourself, right? So communication is a big one, learning how to talk about what we want, what our desires are, what we like in the bedroom. So many people just don't talk, right? They just turn the lights off. And then all of a sudden, I have a friend who says, well, even if it's a bad blowjob, it's still a blowjob. And I'm like, what? So do you just actually sit there and let this person give you a bad blowjob? Or, I've done it myself, having an oral moment with someone and you don't even like what they're doing, but you don't say anything. You're not like, hey, could you soften your touch or move to the left, or you're missing the point, or, like we don't have that communication in the bedroom. So that's one thing that I really, really stress is very important, is being able to talk naked. And we work on getting comfortable with your naked self in the 21 days, because we have to accept ourselves and our bodies. And you have to know what you want and desire before you can share that moment with someone else, because we don't have that conversation before we jump in bed with somebody, right? It's not like, okay, well, tell me what your desires are. Tell me how you like to be pleasured. And if you ask somebody how they like to be pleasured, like their face goes blank. They're like, they don't even know. They can't put it into words, right? So it's getting comfortable with the communication and being able to say what you want. And it's amazing when you do that, how your sex life, if that's what you're working on, becomes so great. And I've said this before too, I love kitchen sex. And I don't mean like bend me over the counter and do me from behind sex, but when I'm cooking, come put your arms around me, whisper a little something sweet, nothing in my ear, give me a little kiss on my neck. To me, that's intimacy. That's what I look for. And then when it comes to the bedroom, if I can share with you, I like that outside the bedroom, then can we talk about what we like when we're naked as well, please? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fred, I've got a question for you. You do a lot of work helping people move beyond the stories and their narratives. And as I sense the work that you're doing, that can be a very intimate experience because you're having deep conversations. Can you talk just around letting go of our egoic constructed identity, getting in touch with our true nature, and how that could either lead to or significantly deepen intimacy?
Sure. That's a lot, but I'll
you can unpack with the best of them.
Well, I mean, I'm going to sort of start from the end, because that was actually what was sort of in my mind just before you asked the question. It's, to me, well, let me start from here. So we all have an ego. Without getting into the whole derivation of where the ego comes from right now, I'm just going to say that we create our egos, all of us, out of fear and insecurity. The ego is a compensation that we create because, like, pretty early in life, we get the sense that something's wrong, and then that sort of becomes something's wrong with me within a relatively short time. And the ego is like really the ego's job is to spend the rest of your life trying to prove that whatever you think is wrong with you is not really wrong with you. So when, I don't know why, I mean, Andrea, I'd be curious what you say about this, but like, why in this culture talk about intimacy and sexuality? And I love the way you say, talking naked, or however you put it. I don't know why that's such, I mean, I guess we could guess, Christian morals, whatever, that we're not allowed to talk about this stuff, and it becomes like sort of associated with being wrong or bad. So then the ego grabs that and it says that it's shameful. There's something wrong with this. And so we have a hard time with it. But the reason I say this all is because in my experience, not that I don't talk a lot about sex with my clients, it's just not where we're generally focused, but what I see is when, as Bobby was saying, when we have those moments when the ego falls away, there's this natural intimacy, this vulnerability, this undefendedness, where we could talk about sex and it would be just like talking about the weather. It's just, another topic. And it's funny because in those moments when you're talking about something like that, I know for myself, there's a part of me that's talking very naturally, and then there's another part of me that's acutely aware of how unusual it is to be talking about something like that. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't fit the normal societal narrative. And so I have a lot of respect for what you're doing, Andrea, in that you've just taken it right out into the public. Like you're not waiting for someone to drop their ego. You're just saying, here it is. Let's deal with it.
Yeah, I really think we need to open up in this space. And a lot of people connect intimacy with sex. And
Right.
intimacy, like I put the post up that other day, is what is intimacy? And a lot of people said the same thing, into me I see.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not, when we look at it from that perspective, if you're intimate with yourself, you can share that. And I am that person that is not taboo. I will talk about it. I have no shame, no regard. I don't carry a religion. We are sexual beings and we are unwilling to accept this about ourselves. In today's society, I find it really crazy with all the porn and fetishes and kinks and everything that's in our faces all the time. Like I was watching, or my mate was watching a football game and it was streaming online and there was a commercial for a porn. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like the only time I think that's not right is there could be children watching that game. Like it's a football game. It's not an appropriate place to put it, but we're going to throw it out there in an ad. But we're not going to talk about this stuff because I just want you to watch it and have this false form of what sex should look like. Like there's so many parts of it that are not real and there's nothing intimate about porn. Right.
But isn't that, it's almost like, wouldn't you expect if we can't talk about it naturally, that it's going to come out in all these other forms?
Well, yeah.
Like
and
that
then, but if you
has to come out.
even look at all of the men that are addicted to porn, like I mean, there's probably some women too, but it's more so statistically speaking for men. And looking at porn is the number one reason for male intimacy or male impotency.
Impotence, right.
Impotency. So when your brain, you put that all into a screen, it gets rewired that you can't even feel a touch anymore. I've experienced this. I know what it's like. And it's really hard to stop. And you can't get pleasure anywhere in your life but looking at this screen. And if somebody comes up and touches you, you don't feel it. You don't get to experience that because your brain is completely rewired. But that is okay. But talking about, what would pleasure that man instead of him looking at porn is not okay. I don't understand that part of the world. Like,
well, I'm curious about that from Bobby, from a hypnotherapy perspective. I think what Andrea said is very interesting is like someone then touches you and even touches you in an intimate way and you don't feel it, right? Because you don't have that intense stimulation of the screen and whatever. I mean, how do you see that? Because I know like in hypnosis, you can literally change someone's sensory experience.
Yeah, and their experience of touch and their experience of pain and lots of other things. I've never run across that where somebody was so intensely into porn that they couldn't experience touch. But I see everything that we've really been talking about as conditioning. The whole reason that it's okay, I guess, in some context to watch porn, but a little bit more uncomfortable to talk about it is conditioning. A lot of dysfunction is conditioning, and we're getting newly conditioned in every relationship that we go through. I was on Match about probably 10 years ago, Match.com. And it was amazing going through the profiles of, the people that I was interacting to and the the constant theme among the women that I was reaching out to, that they had been hurt, they had been lied to, they had been let down. A lot of them had seemingly, at least from what they were putting in their profile, they had had the experience of dating and falling in love with somebody, only to find out that the guy was already married.
Yeah.
And just, I guess, looking for, an alternative on the side, and it got too serious or whatever. But then that becomes conditioning. And I know with guys, if they experience ED, then there becomes this conversation that's going on in their head that they ultimately do battle with. The inner critic will be saying, come on, you're going to go soft again, get out of your head, pay attention to what you're doing. And that constant criticism coming from within can be debilitating, and that's a result of conditioning. It seems like we're a bundle of conditioned responses, particularly, it seems to me, in the bedroom, because of the fact that we can't talk about it more easily. But that seems to be changing.
A little bit.
I heard a podcast. The first time I had heard the term intimacy coach was this year. It was a podcast of a friend of mine. And now I know 5 women who are doing some version of what it is that you're doing. So I'm sensing a shift. Are you perceiving that as well? You said a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. People are getting out there to try new things. I know in our free group that I have, we were talking about group sex and if you enjoyed it or not. And someone is like, well, sex is meant to be only for your eyes and only for, it shouldn't be shared. So is it or isn't it? It's just expanding on the conversation and learning what other people think and know, and incorporating all the different religions and their religious views, and breaking past all of that. It doesn't matter what religion you're in. If you're married or with a partner, you should be able to have talk about sex like you can the weather. To me, that is really important with the person you're sharing. But even if it was in a group sex situation, I hope you're going to have a conversation to set boundaries and do that stuff before you dive into that, because that could turn into havoc and a mess real quick, if you're not sure what other people are expecting or wanting. But I do think that it is shifting a little bit. And when I'm as open as I am, some people are like, good God, you just talk about everything. And I'm like, yeah, why? Like, I do it. Don't you do it? But we don't want to admit we do it for some reason.
Yeah, I was just thinking that if you can't sort out a healthy level of intimacy with one other person, it seems like probably a group is not the next step.
Right. But it's also being confident with yourself in the bedroom too, knowing that, okay, I'm good at what I do in the bedroom. I know that. But what if something I do that person you're with doesn't like, and you think that you're so good at it, and again, that's the bottom line, is communication. Talk about, how you do things, what you want. I do think it is changing a little bit, but I do know a lot of people are still really keeping it in the taboo section. We're a little more open in the world with it right now because everything's online, and online portrays a lot of sexual behavior and activity, but we still aren't talking about it. We're seeing it, we're going through it, but are we getting real that, like, as an individual, again, into me, I love sex. Can you say that and be proud of that and be like, damn it, let's go do that? It ignites my life. So it's like, this is my every day. I start with my which is meditate, masturbate, and motivate for the day. Like, I don't know how it gets better than that, really. Like, just every day. And I'm okay with sharing that. But how many people are going to come out and be like, oh yeah, I masturbated today, and be okay with sharing that? We're not there yet. I wish we
Yeah,
were.
no, I get that. That's interesting, right? It's like,
Mhm.
and it's funny because I'm thinking about how long we've been trying to have this conversation. Because I mean, I remember Dr. Ruth. You guys remember? I mean, and what are we
Yeah.
talking now? Like 30 years ago or more?
More. Yeah.
Yeah.
That she was talking about all this stuff, masturbation and all of this stuff. And, here we now pornography has grown in leaps and bounds since that time, thanks probably largely to the internet. But
Mhm.
like in conjunction with that conversation has not grown a really healthy conversation around it. So I don't think we're any more comfortable talking about it now than we were 30 or 40 years ago, despite the fact that it's almost ubiquitous. I mean, like, you know,
Like
when
we
I was a
say it's,
kid,
yeah, we say it's
like,
taboo, but it's not.
well, I mean, I was just going to say, like, when I was a kid, like, it would be like hiding a Playboy under your bed, you know, and it was like, this was it. And now it's like, my kid, when he was like 13, I found all this pornography on his phone, which I was okay with. I mean, I wasn't thrilled that that's what is it, but I mean, it's what's out there.
I think that's true too. Talk to your kids about sex, man. Like, if you're not doing that, who's going to teach them? I have two kids, and I talk to them relentlessly about sexual things. And I know I've embarrassed them. I know that I know what I've done, but you know what? They've been safe. They haven't had any really bad sexual experiences. When something isn't going right, they come to me because I've built that trust with them. And people will say to me, like, I can't believe you talk to your kids about sex. Well, do I want porn teaching
Really?
my kids about sex? Like, are
Right.
you serious? No way, man. That's not even realistic. Doesn't matter what kind of porn you're watching, unless you're watching some amateur couple that just uploads it on OnlyFans or something. You know what I mean? But what you see in general porn is not real in the bedroom. It doesn't happen. So I don't want them learning that. You want to learn sex things, or you want to learn about sex, or you have a question. I taught my kids to put on a condom. I put my daughter on the pill. I didn't say you couldn't do it. I just wanted you to be safe about it. I
Well,
taught
and I
them
was,
about masturbation, right? It's
yeah, well,
important.
I wanted to ask you about that. Like, what actually do you tell your kids? Okay, so you said a couple of things, right? You taught them about masturbation. That sounds like an interesting conversation in itself. Uh, how old are your kids?
25 and 22 now.
Okay, so I'm assuming these conversations took place some time ago.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but
Like, even when I
how?
wasn't very comfortable with it, like my kids were sitting at the table one day. I think my son was in grade 8 and my daughter was in grade 10, and they started talking about something, and all I heard my daughter say is, "Oh, that means sex, Ethan." And I'm like, "Ah, okay, tis the time, tis the time." So I went and grabbed 2 bananas and I grabbed 2 condoms and I sat them down, and we learned to put a condom on. And my daughter's like, "Why do I have to do this?" I'm like, "Because if you think he's going to cover it, you're probably wrong. You have to know how to do this too, to take care of yourself." And then, actually, about the masturbation part, I bought my kids each a book. I don't remember the author, but the names of the book is Tickle Your Pickle and Tickle Your Fancy. And obviously the pickle is for the boys and the fancies for the girls. But it goes through the whole body. Like, to me, it's more about learning yourself, right? So it described the male anatomy or the female anatomy, and it went through steps on how to pleasure yourself. My daughter actually got mad at me and threw it at me, and it's like, "I'm not masturbating." I'm like, "Then how are you going to let anybody else touch you?" You
I'm
know?
just curious how old they were when you gave them those books.
I think my daughter was 13, and I think my son was 12 when I gave him his.
Well, I mean, one of the things I like about that, and we also gave our son not that book, but books about just like normal, like sexuality and development. And I remember him reading it in the back seat of the car and like saying, "Dad, did you know?" And a
Yeah.
couple of times I was like, "I didn't know that."
Yeah,
I
well,
had been,
they learn a lot from, and sometimes as parents we're not really, we can't teach our kids everything, right? Like, I know I could not do homework with either of my kids. They both told me I was stupid, so I just was stupid to them. I didn't care. I hired them tutors. They both got really good grades because I didn't teach them, but maybe because they just couldn't learn that from me. So I never took offense to that stuff.
Well, I think the idea of just like creating the space for it, right? So you give them the
Hmm.
book, whether they read the book or not, you've now like said, this topic is okay in this family, you know,
Yeah.
and that I think just intrinsically drains some of the shame out of it because,
Yep.
it's okay. This is just something we deal with here.
Yeah.
Nudity, in a family, all that kind of stuff is everyone's got different ways of addressing it. But as soon as you take the shame out, then they don't
Hmm.
have to carry that shame into their relationships.
Right.
We
Yeah.
hope.
Yeah,
Right.
that to me seems one of the keys. But I'm curious about. I got a book too when I was, I don't know, 12 or 13 or 14. My book was the everything that you wanted to know about sex, but were afraid to ask. And I remember the first half of it or so being a really good instruction manual, but then the whole second half of the book was exploring. I don't know if it's every fetish, but major fetishes, BDSM, foot fetishes, peeping toms, cross dressing, and that book was in like late 60s, early 70s, so it handled all of those things very differently than we would handle them. But I'm wondering what do we need to do to get to the point where we can actually have these conversations. I remember trying to have conversations with both of my kids, and they were disasters. I mean, my kids were just in full revolt. Dad, we're not talking about this. I am
Mm.
not talking about this. And they just kept gesticulating and verbally saying, "Stop, stop." And to me, it seems like if we could get to the point where we can be comfortable with bodies and comfortable with conversations and comfortable talking and have that rapport. I cannot imagine my kids coming to me and asking me any type of a sexual question at all.
Well, I can share a pretty funny story with you of my son, and I know that if he watches this, I won't even get yelled at. But it was we. This made us laugh so hard. He was older when this happened, but he was like, "This is just kind of the questions that young men might have, right?" So you don't know what it is. So he says to me, "We were driving. We ended up having to pull over because we were all laughing so hard he couldn't even drive anymore. Like we were just giggling." So he's like, "Mom, so I went to finger my girlfriend and there's like this thing, something, it's like a bell inside her." And I was like, I just started laughing. I'm like, "Oh, buddy, ring that bell." And he's like, "What?" And I'm like, explain what it was, the cervix and what it does and all of those things. And he was like, "Oh, I thought there was something wrong with her. I didn't know what was going on." But just that, they don't know that there's a cervix in there. They don't know, young men, they don't have a vagina and they don't know all the parts, right? So it was pretty funny. So there's often times that I will pull over at a bell and just start ringing it and send them pictures and videos because it reminds me all the time of ring that bell. It's pretty funny.
That is great.
But that's how you drop the shame, right? Like, I mean, it's gonna be funny. That one to me was just hilarious. But there's times when it's not, or they go through a sexual thing that hurts them, and then they have somebody safe they can share that with and be like, "Mom, this happened," and I can help them through it without any judgment, or be like, "Oh my God, you should have never done that," or "What are you doing fingering your girlfriend? That's horrible." Like there is a lot of, and parents don't know how to talk about it. I know a lot of coaches that don't know how to talk about sex, and they do a lot of personal development, and that was my experience in my personal development journey. I have a lot of sexual trauma in my childhood, and overcame it by going through, my personal development, earning trust and all that stuff. But I had to work on that sexual part on my own. And that's why I really do what I do, is because personal development needs to include sexuality. Because if we don't heal that, are we truly healing our full being? Like, to me, it's just, okay, I'm healed. You know what? I have confidence, I have trust, I have self-esteem, self-worth, but I can't talk in the bedroom.
Right.
So how is that working for you?
Well, they're also not being honest because
Right? But
if they
coaches don't
had,
address it. They don't address
right.
the actual sexual healing because they don't know how to talk about it.
Yeah, I think that in terms of really being a healthy human being, that might be one of the few areas that is really still, I don't want to say it's taboo. That's probably too strong of a word, but there's still a lot of shame around it. And so it's not
Mhm.
an easy conversation for most people to have.
Yeah, no, it's not easy, but it's definitely worth it. Nothing easy ever has the outcome of something that was hard to do. You know, if it's easy, probably just stop doing it. That's what I say. Because when we push through those hardships and those struggles, we come out so much better on the other side.
Yeah.
You know, we just have to face ourselves. And I think that's the scariest thing in the world is to face yourself. You know what? You might hate that person over there, but take a look at yourself because that hate's coming from within you. And then when you stop and take a look at yourself, which I'm sure you both know with working with people, other people, when they start to see themselves and how they've behaved or what they've done or whatever, they start to, you kind of go backwards a little bit in the beginning of your journey when you start taking responsibility for yourself, you know, and
Well,
then
go ahead. Sorry.
the intimacy part is into me, I see. What do you see? And how are you reflecting that? And who's reflecting to you?
I just wanted to add the ability to really just be with ourselves, to be able to say, this is what I desire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or this is what I'm afraid of. You know, I feel ashamed of this. To just be able to be present with whatever your experience is around sex in this case, and just let it be just like where I am now. This is just what I'm experiencing right now. And the moment we get honest about it, there's a possibility of something else arising. But
Absolutely.
if we're not allowed to talk about it, if this is like my own personal little, dysfunction, and I can't tell anyone else because then they'll know or whatever, yeah, I mean, that's I think where a lot of this lives for people is it's we're not allowed to talk about it. So I think, what you're doing does create a lot of freedom for people.
Mm-hmm. And fetishes are dirty. You know, people think that it's dirty. You know, I have like a couple of people who have reached out to me and they're like, is it wrong that I like to be watched when I'm masturbating? Well, no, that's not wrong as long as you have the right audience. You're not just doing it to random people. You know, like I don't personally want to see that, but if that's your thing, have your thing. You have a foot fetish, have a foot fetish. Be honest with yourself and do those things because for the love of life, there is somebody in this world who has that same fetish and you can find them. It's not hard, right? So don't be ashamed of your fetishes. Just step into your fetish, be your fetish, do it.
What, if anything, are you noticing with the kind of the Me Too movement and just how, oh, from my perspective, only overly sensitive that, just a wrong word or a wrong phrase can trigger somebody, and that seems to be working against what I was noticing earlier, that I know 5 women that are doing the type of work that you're doing. It's kind of like we've got these two forces working against one another. Are you seeing that at all? Are there any are we grabbing our freedoms at the same time that we're putting up new walls?
I kind of see that. And I do see what you're talking about in the struggle there. The Me Too movement, I mean, obviously I'm part of it. I've been sexually abused and raped a few times. So, but you know what? I can talk about it. And I don't need to blame anybody. I'm not looking for justification or anything like that anymore. I realized that my sexual energy was so powerful and I didn't know how to use that. So it found a way to find me, right? So me taking responsibility for that, I I see still all the shame, and I still think that without your boundaries or your boundaries being crossed, that is really wrong. But you need to set your boundaries. And for people who are in that space of being in sexual abuse, they have to ask for help. And there are enough resources right now. You will get help. You will be taken care of. I don't feel like it's so pushed aside anymore that people aren't doing anything about it. You know, we can talk about it, and there is a solution for it now, more open than there ever used to be, right? It used to be, oh, don't tell anyone that. Tell everyone that. Get the help you need. Go do what you need to do to take care of you so that you can be free. Because it really doesn't have to do with anyone else. And the collaboration of all these people getting together in the Me Too, there's been a lot of sexual abuse in the world. Yeah. And we're seeing that, and we're being made aware of it. And then people like us get to show up and say, okay, let's heal that. Let's take care of it, because you don't need to carry that forever. That happened at that time for whatever reason. Let's get rid of that shame, guilt, denial, everything for you.
Yeah, I think that it's a very tricky because, of course, like the way most things get dealt with on a societal or cultural level, it doesn't go anywhere near as deeply as you're talking about, you know? So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it ends up becoming now like the Me Too movement, I think, started off with this very important conversation about how these things were happening and, you know, in entertainment industry and corporate America, wherever, and it was being quieted and hushed up. And so then it comes out, but then it kind of continues, that pendulum keeps swinging to where it becomes men are being like guilty before proven innocent, and there's all kinds of other stuff that
Right.
begins to happen. So it creates a different kind of protectiveness, a different kind of defensiveness, because now we're afraid to talk about it again
Yeah. And what
because
about
I'm
the
afraid
men?
somebody. What's that?
Like, what about the men? I know lots of men who have been sexually abused. And, you know, why is it that women get to talk about their abuse and men don't? Like, I know a lot of men who are sexually abused as children, and they've had to heal that trauma and pain for themselves. And to me, they should be part of that Me Too movement as well. You know, we don't, for some reason, it's always the men's fault. And I just don't believe that.
Well, it just creates more boundaries, or not really boundaries, like obstacles, right? That we have to
Hmm.
somehow get through in order to just have a healthy conversation.
Yes.
Because
And
now I'm at
men have
work,
this,
you know,
there's a
like I know
huge
like teachers aren't
expectation.
even allowed to hug their students
Oh,
anymore.
I
You
know.
know, I mean,
So
right. But you
sad.
see, that's the backlash
Right, right.
of you know, you weren't allowed to talk about it at all, and now everyone's so careful that we're
Yeah.
afraid of all of it, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's not necessarily positive, even though it started unquestionably as a positive thing.
Yeah. And like being able to be heard, women have in general for centuries have not been heard. And we're starting to have a voice and be heard again in the world, society, cultures, all of those things. So that's like a collective thing that is finally changing. But are we using our voices to create change for the better, or are we using our voices to shame?
Well, I think that's really important, actually, like women stepping into a leadership role, you know. And I'll say something that may be a little unpopular. Um, but and if we break this down, not so much as women and men, but like as the feminine and the masculine, you know. And to me, like the way I understand that is the masculine really, like almost its highest priority really is to serve the feminine, you know, and to protect and all these things. And when so I mean, I understand this whole idea of a patriarchy based on men being bigger and stronger and whatever the whole story's based on. But there's a part of me that's like, you know, the really empowered feminine wouldn't really, it's like the men would be so busy serving the feminine that they wouldn't be going out and making all the trouble and causing all the damage in the world. And so I don't want to make it like, see, I don't want it to be about blaming the masculine or the
Mm,
patriarchy or whatever, as though men fucked up the world. I don't see it that way. You know, I see it as a balance of energies that if the feminine was able to, express their piece more effectively, the masculine would probably come more into line,
I
and I see
agree.
that as much in the world as I do in sexuality. you
Hmm.
know it's got to be a balance.
It is really amazing when I work with the couples that I work with, and we talk about all of this stuff in our little bedroom container that we have, and we're naked and we're doing this work together. And I'm like, and don't forget to do this in the kitchen. And they both kind of look at me. But then 3 weeks later, 9 times out of 10, I'll get a text, oh my God, talking naked has opened up so many conversations in our marriage. And they're talking. They're really communicating real things, real issues, and they're overcoming them because you drop that veil. You let yourself be seen. And I think we just need to do that in the world. I think the world is begging for us to be our truest selves and step into our sexual power and own it and not abuse it, not take it for granted or use it against somebody, but actually just accept it and be that sexual being you were born to be. Let it shine.
So, talk a little bit more about talking naked and how you set that up and what you notice that as your clients participate in that exercise, what shift are you seeing taking
Uh,
place inside of them?
I start that with soul gazing, and that's a practice where it's a Taoist belief. So if you look into somebody's eyes for 30 seconds or longer, your heart's actually beats on the same rhythm. And then also, they also believe the soul lives within the eyes. So you're actually sharing your soul with somebody. So you get really close to each other and touch each other, and I have them hold their hands a certain way so that energy can circle around between them. And they just gaze into each other's eyes. It's a soft, gentle gaze, not like a staring contest, not like who can keep their eyes open longer, but just a gentle gaze with blinking. And it's kind of cool. Sometimes your face transforms, or like weird things happen, or giggling happens a lot because no one's done it before. So it's kind of like it feels really funny. And then they giggle once we get past the giggles and start doing the breathing and the soul gazing. And I've actually even had some couples where spirits have come through, like their parents or their grandparents or whatever. It's really been neat to watch what can happen
Mm.
during a soul gazing session. But we connect that way. We connect our energy. We connect our bodies, our breathing. Our hearts are beating on the same rhythm. And that's where we start the communication. And they're naked doing that. They get naked, do some soul gazing for a minimum of 2 minutes. If they go longer, they go longer. If they don't, they don't. The minimum is 30 seconds, maximum for as long as it is comfortable for you. So we start with that. And then we can get into that conversation, because usually what happens is there's some issues in the beginning, and then they're like kind of bickering back and forth. And I'm like, okay, let's just stop the bicker and start the soul gazing so we can communicate. Once we're all on the same page, it's really easy to communicate. And being in that intimate space there with soul gazing, to me, that's really, really intimate. You drop something just drops. I don't know what it is,
Yeah.
but then when we start the work, they're very calm. They're listening to each other. They're hearing each other. They're saying what they need to say. They're getting the respect, both the man and the woman. They both are getting what they need out of the conversation. And them just learning to be naked and have that conversation naked allowed them to deal with getting a flat tire better. Because they might have thought about it. What did you do? Instead, it was like, okay, I'm coming to help you. No problem. Like that in the past, it would have been like, why are you always so careless with the car or whatever?
Right.
It just
So,
really like highlights for me how close we really are to intimacy. Like even a couple that hasn't like said it. I mean, honestly, my parents, like the words "I love you" were like never exchanged. And I don't say that to denigrate at all. I'm just
mhm.
using this example. And yet, I mean, what it would have taken to get them to actually look in each other's eyes for 30 seconds could have been interesting. But how close we are to it, like even after all the years of, not really being intimate, that it's right there, it's available. It's our nature to be intimate and to be connected with another human being.
Yeah, it's the connection. I think that that is what creates the difference. And like I have one couple that actually they started doing soul gazing with their children, and their kids are opening up more to them, and not naked, obviously. That one, I'll just put it out there. They didn't do that naked with them, but they soul gaze with their children because it's about that connection.
Yeah.
And I was doing it with my kids for a little bit as well. It's just amazing what you let go of when you share that space with somebody.
Yeah. I mean, I'm reminded of a story. This is quite a few years ago. And it wasn't, I mean, this is not about sexuality at all, but I was with a spiritual teacher at the time, and I had some kind of an experience. It wasn't in any kind of an event. It was literally just sitting with him on his back porch. But something opened for me, like where my identity fell away for a time. And I was a little disoriented by it, and he had to leave. He had to go to a meeting, and he left me with this other guy named Steve. He basically said, "Steve, just take care of Fred while I'm gone," because I was a little out of it. But I remember sitting at the kitchen table with Steve, with tears streaming down my face, looking at Steve, and the only words I was saying was, "What was I so afraid of?" Like this other human being, and I realized all the levels of protection and identity and all this stuff that I built just to not be present with a human being. And in the seeing of that, it was an unbelievable revelation. Of course, Steve didn't get it at all because he wasn't in that same place. It kind of freaked him out a little bit, but it was what you're sharing reminds me of that. Is that we're so close to that.
It's an intimate moment, and that's how we can get to know, even soul gaze with yourself in the mirror. I do that when I'm feeling like a little disconnected. I just sit in front of a mirror and have a moment with myself and figure out, why am I feeling this insecurity or this disconnection from, and it's somewhere I disconnected from myself, and then I'm not asking for what I want, or I'm not being heard somewhere. It always comes up when you're in that soul gazing moment. I do highly recommend learning soul gazing. It's really a blessing in disguise. I know the people that I've seen who have been married 18 years or longer, they get a lot of benefit out of it because somehow they missed all that connection through all those years. And anyone who I've taught this to, their marriage has done a complete 360 and turned itself right around. And it's so fun watching people married for 20 years that are acting like teenagers, man. It's so fun. Like, who doesn't want that relationship? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's interesting how, like, a relationship, and I know these are much more rare, sadly, but we probably all can think of like that elderly couple who have been together for like 60 years, who are so sweet and so close. But that sadly is not the norm, is it? Right? Somehow we just kind of drift apart, and it's so subtle. We don't even notice it. And yet, I know, like a broken record, but it's like how close we are to coming back to that connection.
Yeah, I really hope that this is where our forward movement is, and being able to have more acceptance for people's traumas and pains and whatever they've been through, and no longer holding it hostage or keeping a judgment about it, but just accepting. And like you talked before, Fred, about presence, I totally believe 100% show up where you are in that space all the time. Focus on one thing. What you focus on increases too. So if you want that connection, you have to actually show up and be focused to be present. I think that's how, Bobby, you obviously work with presence with your clients.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the number one thing that I do early on in my process is to work with people to stop time traveling. It's the opposite of presence. They're worried about something that may unfold in the future, very often having to do with a worst case scenario that they are vividly, persistently, consistently imagining in their mind. And the little bit of work that I've done with ED is all about that. The moment that as a guy is getting close to becoming physically intimate, all of a sudden that inner critic is, it's like, don't forget what happened last time. Let's make sure that doesn't happen this time. And they're everywhere, but in the present moment that they're in. And actually, I've kind of noticed myself and shared this with a few other people, that that's a great way for a guy to maintain a little bit more control. I think one of the things that guys worry about or want to focus on is lasting a long time in bed. Nobody wants to come before the starting gun even goes off, and it happens. And that can be a useful exercise of time traveling, and then when you're ready, bringing it back to the moment. So, but more often than not, it's debilitating, and it's getting people away from where they want to go. I thought about when you told the story of your son and ringing the bell, just how that could have gone down very differently. If he had pulled out and is like, "Ooh, you're weird in there. What's going on?" And immediately she's going to be like, "Weird? Why am I weird?" And now all of a sudden you got these thoughts that are going to be rolling around the next time.
That's tough to come back from.
Yeah. And like, again, creating that safe space for anybody to have a sexual conversation, whether it's your children or your friends or some stranger. It's being able to have that conversation, or even your lover. You know what? I felt something inside you. What's going on? There's ways to say it to somebody, but young people are exploring. And if you don't know if you don't know a male anatomy, or you don't know a female anatomy, and you're playing with the opposite of yourself, you just don't know. And we shouldn't judge, but yet that's the first thing that humans seem to do, is quick to judgment and quick to be like, "Oh my God, what do you mean?" But we always say it's not good enough, right? We're never good enough. If somebody says something to us that isn't on a positive note, it brings us to think that we're not good enough.
Yeah, but you see, there's the opportunity, rather than using that as confirmation of our own beliefs about ourselves, which are really what the ego is. It's an opportunity. You say something to me, or something happens in an intimate situation that feels somehow that I have shame about. There's an opportunity to sit, like, that's life giving you exactly what you need in that moment. And God, if you can actually share it in that moment, like, boy, when you said that, I felt a lot of shame. That's
huge, actually. That's where healing happens, and getting out of your shame, right? When we own that we're having shame, and we can talk about it and be like, "Hey, you know what? You said this to me." And as adults, we can have this conversation more so than young kids exploring. But you can just say, "It made me feel this way when this happened in the bedroom situation, and now I'm, I don't want to do that again, or I don't want to try this." And or have that just have the conversation.
Just
have the hard conversations. Yeah, own it.
Own, like, and I know this is not how you meant it, but even like language, like, "you made me feel," versus, "when you said this, I experienced this," or "I felt that." It's like I'm taking responsibility for what I experience,
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that I'm over it. It means, like, I'm really still in it. And then have that conversation naked, right? I mean, really.
And how you can get over it. I know I struggle with some insecurities, and I have to have that conversation often. But when I'm being insecure, I just say it. Like, "I'm being really insecure today," and I know it. I'm full on aware of the way my body is feeling, whatever. And then usually it's like, "Well, how can I help you get over it?" Sometimes I know, and sometimes I don't know. I just needed to tell somebody that I'm feeling this way. And being heard about it, and having a hug, and being told. I don't even need reassurance. Just saying it makes you feel better.
Yeah. Oh my God, I was reading Miriam's comment. If you want to put it back up again, there it is. I mean, I'll let Andrea field that one.
Well, yeah. We had a discussion about the way that we don't like how our spouse or mate smells or something like that too.
Oh, God.
That was a sexually inexperienced person, and I'm sure if he went to the doctor to find out he didn't have any STDs or anything because he touched her, the doctor would probably then be able to explain it. But everybody has their own natural scent, and if he doesn't like the way she smells, I actually think that's like a thing. If you like the way that your mate smells, like we're attracted to those things,
Yeah.
right? You smell that before you even say hi to the person usually,
It's just
right?
another
Like
level of pheromones, I think.
Yeah.
yeah, it is. And if you're not liking that, that probably to me is not the person you should be with, like,
And I imagine there's some metabolic or nutritional stuff that could come into play.
but
But
yeah,
that's
there's all
another
kinds of things
conversation.
you could do, but we were talking about sexually
Right,
inexperienced people.
right.
So I mean, they don't know that there's ways to, change the flora or the scent or the stuff by what we eat or whatever we do with our life. I mean, even having a man ejaculate in you will change your scent and
Sure.
your flora and everything. It disturbs that whole thing when there's semen inside of your vagina. So it can get thrown off by so many things, if she's about to have her period, if she just had her period. Yeah, there's so many reasons why that would happen, but I could see how if you didn't like the smell of someone in that situation, and you could be like, oh, STDs are supposed to mean stinky stuff, right? So I could see the correlation of him having that idea, but
Probably not lecturing her was not the best choice, but
yeah,
Yeah.
no. He could have
Probably
just been
not.
like, I don't really like your smell down there.
not easy to say, to be fair.
Yeah, and especially inexperienced.
Right.
He didn't know how to say that, so he just lectured her.
Yeah.
That's how it came out.
Mansplaining.
Mansplaining, yeah, it happens. And this is just it too, having those conversations about, you know what, I don't really like to give you a blowjob if you don't shower first. It's actually a boundary of mine. So if you go get in the shower, game on. But
At least get in for the lower half.
yeah, right, exactly. Just rinse that thing off. You've been at work all day, and if you're
Right.
uncircumcised, I've had experiences where it just doesn't smell good, and I don't want my face near it. So I also don't want my vagina near it, knowing that could mess everything up in me. I could get a yeast infection, or like something there could happen. So I like clean fun. So you want to have that kind of fun.
Good, clean fun.
Good, clean fun with open conversation. And if you don't like it, please tell me what I'm doing wrong, so I can do something different to pleasure you. Because I know you said men serve the female, masculine serves the feminine, but I do know a lot of feminine that likes to please the masculine.
Oh yeah, no, that's a different. I'm not saying it's a one-way street at all.
No, I know it's just like a greater value there, but when it comes to sex, I know a lot of women who just love to get it on, and some of the men don't know how to handle that or keep up with it. And then we have things like ED and premature ejaculation, and it's I work with a lot of men about stamina and erectile dysfunction as well, because it seems to be a bigger issue as men get older and they stop seeing themselves as a sexual being.
Yeah.
They've like a lot of pressure on men,
Yeah. Mostly that we stick on ourselves and on each other, where men are very good at ribbing their buddies about any little perceived weakness. And I think one thing for sure that we have demonstrated is that all problems exist in the absence of a good conversation.
Right.
And we need to have a lot more of these type of conversations. So with that, we're just beyond the top of the hour. We got going a little bit late. Andrea, if you would tell us a little bit more about your 21-day journey into intimacy that you're going to be doing after the first of the year. How can people find out more about that?
Well, we have a free group. It's called Embrace Your Inner Slut. And we've been playing around with a lot of sexual conversations in there. It's actually been really fun. And that's where anyone can find out what we're doing. It's 21
Is that
days.
just for women?
Nope, men and women. Yeah, I'm having a really hard time. People keep telling me I have to choose men or women, and my mission is to create divine human connection. I don't see a man or a woman that isn't included in that. So I'm not going to be
I only
working with
ask.
one or the other.
I get that. I only ask because the word slut, and I don't mean to start a whole new conversation, tends to be associated with women.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Well,
a man
it's
can be
time.
a slut too. Hear
Men
that,
can be
guys?
sluts too. We all can. Yeah. So the 21 days is just exactly that. It's we go live every day and give you a task to do. So it takes 21 days to change a habit. So we give you 21 days to increase intimacy in your life. And for the people that we've done in our past groups, it's really outstanding and amazing the shifts that it makes, even if it's a little one. It's a little one in the right direction for you, moving out of your shame-based behavior and embracing intimacy into your life.
Awesome.
And yeah, there's my page Expectations. My profile has it on there. I definitely will keep things rolling on my profile and stuff, but we've got a few fun things lined up. So
Cool. Thank you. And
yeah.
Fred, share a little bit if somebody wants to work with you in your self-realization work, your self-inquiry work. What's the best way for somebody to get in contact with you and learn a little bit more about what you're doing?
Well, there you see my information on the screen. My website I think is down right now. There's some kind of technical thing, but my email still works, so you can email me. I don't know why my phone number is not showing up too, but you can email me. I'm pretty easy, honestly. If somebody is interested in doing the sort of deep inquiry work that I like to do with people, to really find the freedom on the other side of that, I'll have a session with just about anyone. I mean, I'll waive my fee for that session to just really have a sense of like, what is this work? Because I know it's not for everyone at any given point in your life. It may not be the right time for you. And so I'd like to give you a chance to experience it. And if it's an awesome experience, then we'll know if we want to go forward from there or not. So I just make it easy. If you want to have a session with me, just reach out.
Yeah, and the work that we do is pretty intimate type work, not intimate in the way that we've been talking about it today, but we do really kind of pull back layers of the
I almost always
intimacy
keep my clothes on with my clients.
Me as well.
I don't.
Although that may be a whole new niche for me, naked hypnosis.
There you go.
Ooh.
And that may play into people's fears about hypnosis anyway, because I think a lot of people.
Ooh,
That's right.
True. Maybe don't go there.
Yeah, right.
Well, those of you who joined us live and took the time to comment, we really appreciate you. We did not do as good of a job as we sometimes do keeping current on the comments that were flowing in, but we will respond to them in the group. We are the Presence Posse. We're on this same time every Monday. And Miriam, if you're back there, do you know what our subject is for next week? I did not do a good job.
Just pop on the screen, Miriam. Oh, she put it in the private chat, didn't she? We don't have a topic for next week.
Oh,
what?
All right. Well, we'll be meeting right after this to come up with a topic.
We will come up with a topic.
You can find out about that at the Presence Posse page right there on Facebook. So
indeed.
Andrea, I appreciate you coming back as a guest star for the second time. We really appreciate it.
It was nice to meet you, Fred.
Part of this, and thanks to everybody for tuning in.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, guys.